Better future. What is that? What would you like to see in a better future, and how do we achieve that better future?
May I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to warmly welcome Mr. Samuel Matsekete.
There is also a story I will probably just share briefly. A certain farmer who was a large-scale farmer, a Mr. Liwayo, used to grow maize and he used to buy the best seed. He would ensure that he has got all the fertilizers, the chemicals required for him to maximize the yields from his field. But he had neighbors that were probably less committed than he was. Perhaps they would compromise the standard of the seeds that they would use. They would not weed the fields. The crops in their farms were of a poorer standard. Each time harvest time came, Mr. Liwayo would get less than he projected as the yield for his quality of seeds, the efforts, the inputs he has applied to his field. And he wondered why, because he was doing everything in the book. Until he thought there must be something about things that I am not able to control, that are not within my farm, that are affecting my performance. He drove around. Indeed, he thought he discovered what the problem was. And the challenge was that the farmers around him were using poorer seeds. They were taking less care of their fields, and they had weaker maize crops. And he also then discovered that come harvest, come the time that's it's tasseling time, right? The tassel is out and there's pollination and so forth. He discovered that his field, despite him carrying the best seed, was always compromised by the quality of the crop in the fields around him, because the cross-pollination, when the winds came, they didn't respect the boundaries, right? And there would be cross-pollination and so forth, and the averaging out worked out to a poorer yield for his field. He decided the next season that he will work with the farmers around him. He will show them the seeds that he recommends for the soils that they had in that region. He would take them along and also encourage them to adopt the right practices for the farms. In that season, when everyone was working to a standard that this farmer thought would improve the yields, everyone's yields were better. The moral of the story: there are things that we try to do in our own small places. There are efforts, and best efforts indeed, that we try to apply, but it can never be the optimal performance if people around you and the people that you are supposed to collaborate with are not held to the same standard. The opportunity we have this morning is to have a shared platform that we can share ideas, and the sum total of the insights, the ideas that will come out of here, should make the collective better. Okay, so Patrick, you have to beat that record. May I welcome you all to this second edition of our one-day summits, which we call the Better Future Summit. And the event name derives from the National Development Strategies, where you will see a number of priorities being spelled out in that strategy, but also to the 2030 Agenda of the Sustainable Development adopted by the United Nations member states in 2015. And that provides for a shared blueprint to prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. At its heart are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, which are an urgent call to action by all economies, developed and developing, all economic players, and in a way, all households, all our individuals into a global partnership to ensure that our efforts are working towards a better future. In these goals and targets, the UN set out a supremely ambitious and transformational agenda and vision for making the future better, which is also encapsulated, as I've already alluded to, in our national development strategies. At the same time, the theme of sustainability is gaining prominence in all pursuits, in business, in household activities, in economic decisions and choices that we make. Collectively, these principles of sustainability, the agenda of sustainable development goals, the agenda of the national development strategies, if upheld, should indeed set us on a course for a better future. In the pursuit of a sustainable future, economies face the necessary challenge of aligning their development goals with United Nations SDGs, which we also say, as Zimbabweans or as businesses operating in this country, cannot be different for us. It is critical to align private sector and household efforts, therefore, with national development goals and with the theme of sustainability with UN SDGs, because that way we are having cohesive thrusts for sustainable growth in our microeconomies as well as at the macroeconomy. When this alignment is achieved, greater progress and positive economic, environmental, social, and indeed governance impacts are registered. In line with our mission to sustain, grow, and protect the prosperity of our customers, we believe sustainability and sustainable development are the surest way to create better futures. You will therefore continue to see Old Mutual grow its commitment in these spaces of sustainability in the way that sustainability and sustainable development goals are enshrined into what we do, and they inform our choices, our decisions, and the priorities we make. And that is because when we do that, we believe we will deliver the best value to those that we serve, in our clients, our customers, and the communities around us. As Old Mutual, just to exemplify this commitment, we recently launched the Old Mutual Renewable Energy Fund, which is a private equity fund dedicated to driving investments into renewable energy projects across the country. This initiative is a collaborative effort between Old Mutual in Zimbabwe, the government of Zimbabwe, and United Nations agencies. We add to this all willing private sector players that are really seeing the value, which is beyond financial, in participating in efforts promoted by the Renewable Energy Fund. The fund aims to raise $100 million. $20 million has already been committed to solar and hydro projects, or as we speak. These investments align with the Zimbabwe Sustainable Development Goals, focusing on SDG 7. Okay, so we have to make it real. SDG 7, which is affordable and clean energy. SDG 9, which talks to industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And SDG 11, which is about sustainable cities and communities. This fund aims to provide financial returns, but beyond financial returns, social impacts and opportunities that will benefit investors and those involved in the renewable energy value chains for their own prosperity. This reaffirms our commitment to promoting sustainable practices and making our choices and decisions in a manner that promotes long-term sustainability. Long-term savings, I had to come to this subject. And insurance, amongst financial services that we enjoy and that we should support, are essential success factors for the sustainable development of economies. Now, and this is at all levels. If you think of it as an individual, when you want to make some progress, you ought to set aside resources. And you ought to do so over a period of time. If it's a household, you set aside resources. You set aside resources so you generate more returns. But sometimes you set aside resources so that you can deal with the rainy day when it comes. And that's where we talk about the twin objectives of investments and insurance being critical to supporting sustainable growth and sustainable development. The extent to which you achieve success on either fronts, the investment to generate returns, or the way that you manage the risks, the rainy day when it comes, are so significantly and hugely dependent on the discipline that you apply to saving as well as to managing the risks. That discipline has to show and evidently show at the individual level, at the household level, at a community level, at a national level. If the disciplines are not sustained at an individual level, at a family level, at a community level, at a national level, the results are always obvious. So that's why we believe that we ought to talk about it. Because if we want to create a better future, we believe, at least from where we stand, financial services, we ought to promote the right practices to ensure that we save, to make sure that we do so for the long term, but also to ensure that we are conscious of the risks that can visit us from time to time. And we do take deliberate and conscious decisions to manage those risks. When we make those choices and the decisions with the view of sustainability, it becomes even more effective. So long-term savings and insurance are definitely an essential parts of supporting sustainable development into the future at all those levels. The levels of investment and the cost of finance are hugely compromised without savings being promoted and encouraged actively by both policy interventions and all economic agents. And the story here is, if you want to invest into a project as an individual, the first question that's asked by people you may seek to come to the table to assist you with funding, they will say, how much skin are you putting into this? Your own skin in the game. How much equity are you putting in? So if your nephew comes and they want to borrow, I'll ask, okay, you want to borrow $1,000 because you want to start a chicken project. How much of your own money have you raised so far? If he tells you that he's got nothing and all he is relying on is your $1,000, then the risk profile of your niece in that instance or your nephew is very high, because he or she doesn't have anything to show that they have the discipline, number one, and the commitment to managing and controlling and growing this resource or project. It is the same at a household level. It is the same at a community level. It is the same at an economy-wide level. So long-term savings provide our skin in the game. And we believe that when we then look at what are the sources of finance, we can ask, and you want to do so optimizing the cost of finance, we ought to have our own skin in the game that is supported by these savings, which we would carry in the various financial institutions. This point can be illustrated at all levels of the economy and society, as I've already said. And long-term savings is therefore a critical enabler to achieving the objectives that we all seek to achieve in growing our investments or in managing the risks that we sometimes face. The second edition of the Better Future Summit brings together a lineup of industry and sector influencers, partners, subject experts, and thought leaders to bring out some ideas, some code. The minimum we ought to say we would like to achieve by end of today is if we can go back to our spaces and say, I've learned something or I've picked an insight, and this insight, I'm going to leverage it to improve my own environment, my own space. We would have done a great job already. So may today and this event be a platform to bring to the fore insightful thoughts, those ideas and recommendations that would serve as input into our corporate and individual strategies, as well as input into submissions for considerations by policymakers. We are looking forward to your active participation and engagement in discussions during this summit, and thank you in advance of all the engagements we'll have today.